It's 3 o'clock. Let's begin the Corporate Governance Committee meeting. Public comment period. Lamont, do we have any speakers?
I believe we have one speaker.
One speaker?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Zhang.
Joe, hello, good afternoon to Joe Loda and Wani Hakem. My name is Kevin Zhang. I would like to continue to bring back the B23 bus along 16th Avenue and Kilturi Road and extend along Reverie Road, Brooklyn Avenue, and Linden Boulevard. I went to work at PS 971 on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 3 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. I took the N train from 59th Street to Coney Island and transferred to the Q train to Brighton Beach, and then walk or transfer to the B68 bus to Coney Island Avenue and Neptune Avenue to go home. On Monday, October 30th, 2017, I saw the Q train was leaving at Coney Island when I missed the Q train and transferred to the F train to Neptune Avenue because the Q train was waiting too long to come, and I walked along Neptune Avenue and then transferred to the B4 bus to Neptune Avenue and Coney Island Avenue by asking people to sign the petition for restored B71 bus along Union Street, and Uncle saw me at Neptune Avenue and Coney Island Avenue, and then I walk home. When Uncle saw me and say, "Why do you ask people to sign the petition?" and gave the online petition paper instruction, but the petition was due Friday, November 10, 2017, and then Uncle talked to Mom about the petition and gave the paper instructions at 7:20 p.m., and Mom talked to Sister about the petition and gave the paper instructions when I freaked out and felt nervous. On Wednesday, November 1st, 2017, Uncle saw me on the N train enter at Bay Parkway by asking people to sign the petition, and Uncle talked to Mom about the petition when I got home, and Mom yelled at me about the petition at 6:48 p.m., and that's why I want to bring back the B23 bus. So make sure to restore the B23 bus, please, as soon as possible. Thank you and have a nice day, Mr. Joe Loda and Fanta Ferrer. Thank you.
We have actually one more public speaker.
We do. One more.
Rachel Ferris. Excuse me.
Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Foss. I'm the Senior Research Analyst for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable state government, including for state authorities like the MTA. First, I want to thank you for your service. We appreciate that you, the MTA Board, are volunteers, given large amounts of complex policy and budget information to review. We are here to ask the MTA Governance Committee to fulfill its mandate under the New York State Public Authorities Law, Section 2824, to adopt best practices on ethics and conflicts of interest. We and many observers of the MTA are alarmed by the conflict of interest and potential pay-to-play created by Chairman Loda's $350,000 a year directorship with Madison Square Garden, an organization which is highly enmeshed with MTA activities ranging
No, I have to interrupt here. I really feel that remarks like that are just totally inappropriate. This is not a forum for character assassination. I've known this man for 20 years. He is the most ethical person, public servant I've known. And he has committed his time. If you to get up there and start character assassination of him or any other person on this board, I'm going to sit here and object. And every time you do it, I am going to interrupt you. Okay? Do not start accusing him or anyone else on this board of pay-to-play or conflicts of interest, especially when you don't know your facts and your facts are totally wrong. How would you like it if I sat there in a public setting and started to attack your character and your credibility? I'm not going to allow you or anyone else here to do it when you do not know what you are talking about. This man served for a mayor. He is a respected hospital administrator, and he's dedicated his time and service to being the chairman of this board and used to be the chairman in a previous thing. No one has ever accused him of having an ethical conflict, and we're not going to start now because of some felonious report in the newspapers, and not have you and others character assassinate him or anyone else on this board. Okay?
If you permit me to finish my statement.
I'll let you finish as long as you don't do character assassinations on people on this board. We're all public servants. We all go through a rigorous ethical process. Don't start trying to smear anyone on this board, including the chairman of the board, Mr. Loda.
And I'd like to associate myself with Mr. Schwartz's comments.
I would like to finish my statement because I believe that some of these ethics and conflicts issues need to be vetted by this board, and we have some recommendations specific to your code of ethics policy.
You can make all the recommendations you want, but every time you character assassinate someone, I'm going to interrupt you.
I spoke about a conflict of interest, which actually I believe the chairman has spoken to the Joint Commission on Public Ethics for the state. So given that there was a requirement for outside income to be viewed by the Joint Commission on Public Ethics, I believe it does relate to conflicts of interest issues. But again, if you'd let me finish, I believe my statement can speak for itself. We're also
So far, your statement has been nothing but a character assassination, so we'll see where it goes.
It has been, but thank you. I appreciate your comments. We are also concerned by political contributions possibly being made by MTA board members in possible violation of the MTA Code of Ethics. Given concerns raised by many of these issues, which the press is rightly highlighting to the public, we urge the MTA Governance Committee to amend the MTA Code of Ethics for board members. Specifically, we ask you to ban outside income for the MTA chairman and CEO, and at a minimum, possibly appointed non-civil service staff. We request that you require notification to the full MTA board of any members' conflicts and create a public record of such conflicts. We request that you ban political contribution from board members' businesses and families and publicly report political activities. And we request that you centralize internal MTA ethics oversight to the Governance Committee, and ideally with one assisting staff member. The Governance Committee has since 2014 adopted the code annually with no changes as you last did in November 2017. We believe that the MCA should hold itself to a higher standard and proactively change its policies now given recent events and not wait for its annual review in December 2018 per your current work plan. The current policy of disclosure and recusal for conflicts is simply not enough to give the public the confidence that MTA officials are only serving the public interest. The MTA has the authority to go above and beyond state law, and it should do so. The chairman of the CEO of the MTA is by law salaried employee and is responsible for discharging the executive and administrative functions and powers of the authority. To have a volunteer in this position who is not subject to the same standards as other agency heads, we don't believe is credible given the duties set in law and responsibility to the public to fulfill them. Our detailed recommendations I would like to provide to you as a follow-up, and we'll send it to you. And I believe that it will address your concerns that we are being fair in viewing this issue from the perspective of ethics and conflicts of interest, following best practices, including from the authority's budget office. Thank you.
Thank you. And there are no further speakers.
No
Hey,
more.
maybe we should take a vote and not allow us to vote in elections too while we're at it.
Approval of the minutes are now in order for our last two meetings. Can I move them together, or do you want to move separately? Together. I'll move them both for March 22nd, 17 and December 11th, 2017. Do I have a second? Second. Any questions, comments, changes? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They carry. Now the presentation, let's see, no, we have the approval of the 2018 committee work plan. Lamont?
Yes, you will see in your book on page 8 the work plan for 2018. It substantially remains unchanged from 2017. We just need a motion to approve.
All in favor? Any opposed? Work plan carries. Now, Lamont, can you continue with the presentation of recent developments in corporate governance?
Yes, pursuant to Public Authorities Law, this committee is required to keep the board informed of current best practices as it relates to corporate governance and to review corporate governance trends. The staff has reviewed the corporate governance guidance issued by the Authority Budget Office in 2017. Based upon that review, there are no current new developments which the staff believes needs to be brought to this committee's attention at this time. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Okay.
Indicator results to the authority's budget office. We are accordingly seeking the board's approval of the report covering fiscal year 2017 that is included with the staff summary and the board's authorization to submit that report to the authority's public budget office.
Are there any questions? There being none? So, motion. I'll move it. Is there a second? Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Lamont, a review and approval of the MTA bylaws.
The staff proposes revisions to the MTA bylaws that would make the MTA bylaws gender neutral, would further describe how the board chair establishes committees and creates a notice process, and clarifies the order of provenance of MTA's governance documents and statutory provisions.
Are there any questions or comments? I'll move the motion. As a second? Second. Any questions or comments? There being, yes. Pick one.
As you know, Mr. Chair, there were some recommendations made by the city with regard to submissions of materials, board materials, committee materials, and then capital program amendments. And while there have been significant improvements with regard to board materials, we've talked about that in a lot of different forums, both behind the scenes and publicly. It would be great to codify those improvements in the bylaws, just to ensure that the continuity of that progress remains moving forward in successive leadership. And then specifically to address the capital program amendments, which we've not had an opportunity yet to address them because we've not yet been faced with another amendment. But there have been recommendations, not just from the city, but from others to, again, codify a window of time for which the board is presented with these materials, and it'd be great to include that into these documents.
Can you, Polly, refresh my memory for what that length of period of time was for the
10 business? I think I have the language here. It said capital program submissions to board members a minimum of 20 business days prior to the board vote, and capital program amendments a minimum of 10 business days. Sort of the main thing this board actually opines on, I think.
Why don't we, we'll take a stab at putting something in writing and passing it around, and then we can have it at a future governance committee meeting. I think it's fair enough. We're doing our best to get the information out. I agree with you wholeheartedly, which is why I wanted to ask you about what a capital amendment and the big capital plan would be. The capital plan is a full month, and so essentially the way it works out with given the number of business days.
3 weeks.
Well, it's 20 business days. Which,
yeah, you're right.
That's a full month. That 3 weeks is 21 full days. So, but that's okay. I mean, it'll back up to the prior meeting, and I need to look at that because there may need to be a compromise towards 3 weeks or something like that. I think that's the use of business days versus actual days gets to be cumbersome at a certain point, I believe. The capital amendment, I fully understand that as well. So we'll put something in writing. We'll pass it around.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions or comments? Motion's on the table already. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next one. After the fact question?
Maybe.
I'm sorry, this is after the fact comment, but not a question. And I can't vote anyway, so. I did want to bring up the issue, actually, which I was the very first to bring up under Chairman, your predecessor, Chairman Prendergast, about the vice chair for the New York City Transit Committee. You've, Chairman, already acknowledged that, addressed that, your willingness. So we just want to, it is my understanding that there is a forthcoming recommendation from the city, which is something that you've asked for.
Great.
So I just want to be on the record as saying that it's something we intend to push for, but also have noted that someone should be forthcoming as a recommendation and hopefully appointed or
Well, I will add to that because the chairman did ask me about that. I don't have an answer quite yet. I have to just say for the record, though, as we've said before, that I do think that the chair of that committee, and no offense to the current chair, who I respect very much, but I think the chair of that committee should be a mayoral appointee. I know you all disagree with that, but I'll put that out there. That said, we will have a vice chair recommendation shortly, and I think at that point Freddie will be wanting to take his vitamin C every day, so he never has a sick day.
So thank you very much for your concern about that.
For the record, I think the chair of the committee should be someone who resides in the city of New York, which is what we currently have. We did not always have that at the MTA, so I think it's really important that they do reside in the city of New York, regardless of the appointment process. Next item is the review and approval of the committee charters. Lamond?
The staff proposes several non-substantive revisions to the committee charters to eliminate unintended variations among the charters and to update references to positions that no longer exist at the MTA. In addition, the staff recommends revisions to the audit committee charter to clarify board voting requirements for retention of outside advisors. Any questions?
Yep. Questions? Comments? Yes.
I have a question first. One of the things that's been in the charters for some time is self-evaluations, and we recently received a little kind of self-evaluation, which we've had before, which includes commentary about most of our committees, excluding bridges and tunnels, I think.
What happens is with the survey, it's actually specific to you. So if you sit on a committee, you'll see that committee. If you don't sit on the committee, you won't see that portion of the survey.
Okay, that makes sense, because I do not sit on bridges and tunnels. Is that what you're referring to, or do you wish the committees to do some kind of self-appraisal in addition? It's unclear to me that that is what you intend.
The self-assessment survey that you will receive is part of what's required under public authorities law, so that is your assessment.
Okay. Next, it seems that all of the committees now will have a vice chair?
I believe that is correct, yes.
And at present, we don't, so that's a change.
And I think I need to determine who that is and then notify everyone as quickly as possible whenever the decision is made, not to linger. If anybody wants to volunteer to be a vice chair of the committee, I'd be more than happy to accept the recommendation.
I didn't see a lot of volunteers here. Well, but that committee has traditionally had a vice chair. Yes. It hasn't traditionally been a city person. There was a period of time where I chaired transit, and I happen to agree that it should be somebody who resides in the city and is using the transit system every day.
And
However,
for a long period of time, it was Barry Feinstein.
That's correct. That's right. That's very true. Then I have a question specific to the CPOC charter. We've had a long-standing practice, maybe 10 years, not the first year or two that I was here, but certainly over the last 10. No wonder I've gotten gray. That the independent engineer is selected by a committee that is largely comprised with people who are committee members. Usually CPOC committee members, but not always. That doesn't seem to be, it's acceptable. You know, I can see how we can do that in the charter, but it isn't stipulated in the charter. And it's always seemed to me that the independent engineer works as much for the board as it does for construction management, because it's a way that the board has input from an external source on things that we are not expert in and couldn't be expected to know. So it's like having another set of eyes on things that can, if they're good, translate the engineering into something that the board and the public can understand.
So I don't get the nuance.
Well, let me be sure that there is agreement that there is space in this charter. What the charter actually says, if you look at item 12 on page number 4, it says, provide guidance to the board chair and the board with respect to appointment and, if appropriate, dismissal, evaluation, and compensation of an independent engineering firm.
What does the statute state about the independent engineer? Because I think that's where the appointment process comes in.
Generally, we took these provisions almost verbatim from the statute, so I'd have to look back to make sure, but generally, CPOC's charter, if you looked back to the provisions in public authorities law, are almost identical. I will take a look back and just confirm that.
Well, I think it's a good practice. I hope it is embedded somewhere in our system of rules and regulations, but if it is not, I think it's a practice that we should continue. It's very helpful to have outside opinions on this, and as I've stated before, I believe that any committee should have the authority to get an outside opinion if they feel they need it. And I recognize that that's somewhat controversial.
No, when it comes to CPOC, I view that the independent engineers work for CPOC, and if we need to alter the words, we'll look at that. I also want to have a conversation, not necessarily in public session, about the reports that we do receive from the independent engineers as to exactly what it is we need to satisfy us as board members, because the routine nature in which they come about are not enough.
I will agree with you. I think it's time that we do have a discussion, but I think it should be offline.
So just one question online. The independent engineers all work for the same firm. All right. One thing we might want to consider, I'm a big believer in competition, in that it allows for, there are multiple firms around, and depending on which projects they get involved with. You may not want to change in the middle, but some of the large projects to be able to get the best possible point of view. You guys have the history better than I do.
The last time that came up, the problem was that a decision had been made that if you were the independent engineer, you could not bid on other MTA contracts, and that
limits
reduced significantly the number of people who would bid, because they all, I'm not arguing, they all did other work for MTA and a variety of other things. So that was the issue that came up. I think we had that whole conversation the last time, is that significantly reduced the number. I'm not arguing it's the right thing or the wrong thing, is that that's what happened.
Another thing acted to reduce the number, and that was the consolidation that has been going on for a long time in the industry itself. So there are, two things just reduced the field enormously.
So we've really had fewer and fewer options on independent engineer, and one of the ways that we've tried to overcome that is to encourage the independent engineer to bring in consultants on topics that they didn't have the expertise for. In fact, specific suggestions about that have been made at the time of selection. I also think that the length of the term might be evaluated, because a shorter term would allow us to keep a team with us that is more up to date on the issues that we're dealing with. Because over 5 years, our issues change tremendously.
Yeah.
So let's have that discussion. I think it's well worth the time.
More than happy to have that discussion because of my own feelings about where we are. Given I know what the working groups are doing on both cost containment as well as procurement reform, that'll all lead into what we need to do with the independent engineers as well, so we can stay abreast. Fair enough.
To summarize this, Lamont's going to get back to us.
I think that was the summation.
Right, the summation, right. But yeah, there are two things. But also, I should have, thank you for I'm going to come back to all the three of you for the history a little bit more to understand it better. Okay. Where were we?
Procurement guidelines.
Procurement line. We're going on to the procurement guidelines. Did we have the vote? No, we didn't have the vote. Motion to on the changes, the recommended changes to the committee charter. I move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? They carry. Now the review and approval of procurement guidelines. Lamont.
The MTA is required to annually review and approve its all-agency procurement guidelines and all-agency guidelines for the procurement of services. These guidelines were last approved by the board on December 13th, 2017. There are no proposed revisions to either of the guidelines. However, they are required to be reviewed and approved annually. Any questions?
I just want to make a statement on procurement. At the meeting on Wednesday, Commissioner Merdler is going to make a brief discussion, presentation of what's been going on in that particular working group, and there will be other presentations as well, short presentations as well by everyone else, but I think it's important that we listen because of the changes that are being proposed initially for the Transit Authority are ones that I think need to be transferred throughout all of the operating agencies. It's very important because Chuck and the team have been able to find some significant movement in how to do things efficiently and effectively, both much faster, period. Okay. Motion, I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? They carry, the guidelines carry. Review of MTA policies in connection with the public authorities law.
The board is required to formally adopt certain policies contained in the exhibit book. These policies have been approved by their respective agencies and are being presented to the board for their review and approval.
Questions, comments?
Motion.
There being none, motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other new business or any other business to discuss? There being none, I move to adjourn. Thank you very much.